Taekyu asked in surprise. Why is Unsung Motors involved here? I had the same thought. Why is Unsung Motors getting dragged into the management rights dispute of Samsung SB? As you know, Samsung SB is the fifth largest electric vehicle battery producer in the world. And Unsung Motors is hoping to expand its electric vehicle production. The shift from internal combustion engines to eco-friendly vehicles, electric and hydrogen, is an unstoppable trend. Unsung Motors has also started producing electric vehicles lately and currently sells 2 models. The reason why automakers are not welcoming this shift to electric vehicles is simple. They have to share their sales profits with battery manufacturers. The cost of the battery accounts for over 30% of the total cost in an electric vehicle. Consequently, that amount flows into the pockets of battery companies, which understandably frustrates automakers. So, are they trying to acquire Samsung SB? Vice Chairman Im Jin-young explained the situation. My mother plans to make my younger brother the CEO of Samsung SB. The current CEO of Samsung SB is Chairman Im Il-kwon. Since he has stepped down from management, his loyal subordinate, President Lee Soo-hak, is serving as interim CEO. Taekyu asked curiously, why is your mother choosing sides? Or rather, why is she backing your brother? Vice Chairman Im Jin-young smiled wryly. There are various reasons for that. First, there is a 13-year age difference between Vice Chairman Im Jin-young and the youngest, Im Sung-young of Samsung Heavy Industries. Being a late-born child, their mother Yeo Jong-hyun dotes on her youngest son. In contrast, Vice Chairman Im Jin-young is known to have a strained relationship with his mother. Family matters are sensitive, so it might be best not to pry further. Instead, Taekyu asked something else. Okay, so you're backing your brother. But what's the relationship between your mother and Unsung Motors? My mother's younger sister, so my aunt, is the lady of the Unsung Motors Group. Jungilbo is Korea's largest newspaper publisher and owns 2 cable channels. Although the influence of the internet and social media has diminished now, decades ago public opinion hinged on a single article. During the time when chaebols and the media supported each other, Chairman Yoon Tae-min could arrange for his 2 daughters to marry into wealthy families. His eldest daughter, Yoon So-hyun, married Im Il-kwon, the heir of the Samsung Group, while his younger daughter Yoon So-jin wed Han Min-gu, the heir of the Unsung Group. In other words, Chairman Han Min-gu is now the brother-in-law of Chairman Im Il-kwon. The 2 prominent chaebols in Korea sometimes collaborated and sometimes competed, but the sisters Yoon So-hyun and Yoon So-jin always maintained a close friendship. Yoon So-hyun officially holds the title of director of the Samsung Art Museum. True to the art museum operated by the Samsung Group, it frequently hosts exhibitions of renowned domestic and international artists. Each time Yoon So-jin attends, showcasing the sisterly bond. It's likely that director Yoon So-hyun's decision to partner with Unsung Group was heavily influenced by her sister. What is the current shareholding structure of Samsung SB? My mother holds 5.8%, and my sister has 4.7%. And you? My share is 0.8%. Taekyu was taken aback. Is that all? Vice Chairman Im Jin-young smiled. And Samsung Electronics holds 15.9%. The reason chaebols in Korea can dominate numerous subsidiaries with such tiny shares is due to the beneficial system of circular shareholding. Regardless, since Vice Chairman Im Jin-young exercises control over Samsung Electronics, combining their stakes results in 16.7%. Surpassing the combined 10.5% of the mother and sister. Then there doesn't seem to be any problem. But if the largest shareholder sides with my sister, it could cause issues. Ah. So that was the twist. Unlike me, who understood right away, Taekyu tilted his head. Who is the biggest shareholder? Think about it. Who would be the largest shareholder of domestic large corporations? Vice Chairman Im Jin-young said, it's the National Pension Service. The National Pension Service has assets exceeding 600 trillion won. This level puts it among the top 3 pension funds in the world. The national pension invests this massive wealth in domestic and foreign stocks, real estate, bonds, and more. Due to the sheer size of its investments, it typically owns over 5% of many large companies. How much share does the national pension hold? 16.1%. It was originally around 10%. But it has increased sharply in the last year. That's quite a lot. The national pension follows a principle of diversified investment, so it's rare for them to acquire more than 10% in a single company. The national pension probably doesn't exercise its voting rights much. The national pension is the largest shareholder of many big companies. Holding 9% of Samsung Electronics speaks volumes. That's already worth 30 trillion won. Naturally, they can exercise voting rights based on their holdings, but they have mostly not done so. A while ago, President Park Si-hyung mentioned the stewardship code at a cabinet meeting. Take you looked at me. Stewardship what? Stewardship code. It means that institutional investors should act as responsible stewards. What does that mean? In short, it's urging them to actively exercise their voting rights. President Park Si-hyung recently pointed out the losses incurred on several occasions, criticizing the chairman of the National Pension Service for not managing the national pension funds, integral to citizens' retirement, diligently. He's right, of course. Who would oppose the idea of protecting the retirement funds of the public? Yet there seems to be a deeper implication behind his words. This is why one should approach politicians' statements with caution. As we can see from past events, President Park thoroughly acts in favor of Unsung Motors' interests. Both Chairman Choi Moon-hyung of the National Pension Service and Director Kim Myung-soo of the Fund Management Headquarters are close associates of President Park. Im Il-kwon is a symbolic figure in Korea's economic history. No one can deny that he has significantly grown the Samsung Group and turned Samsung Electronics into a world-class company. Even if the National Pension Service were to exercise its rightful voting rights, dismissing Im Il-kwon would likely face strong opposition. However, the situation will change once he passes away. When a CEO dies, appointing a new CEO is natural. The issue will simply be whether to side with the brother or the younger sibling. Has the intention to increase shares of Samsung SB been driven by a hope for such a day? I calculated again. Combining the shares from the National Pension Service raises the hostile shareholding to 26.6%, while Vice Chairman Im Jin-young holds 16.7%. Without securing friendly shares, he will inevitably be outvoted at the shareholders' meeting. Taekyu curiously asked, but even if the younger brother becomes CEO of Samsung SB, it doesn't directly relate to Unsung Motors, does it? That's a valid point. I had been wondering about that too. My mother intends to marry her son to Han Hyo-rin, the executive director. This is a name I haven't heard before. Who is Han Hyo-rin? She is the second daughter of Han Jong-gu, the CEO of Unsung Card. Han Young-ju, the founder of the Unsung Group and the richest individual in South Korea, had a reputation for being a child magnate as well. He has 5 sons and 3 daughters. Not to mention countless illegitimate children. While having many children may be a source of happiness for parents, as the chairman of a group, he couldn't help but worry about the succession. Originally, the successor of Unsung Group was the eldest Han Min-gu. As the eldest son with excellent management skills, it seemed obvious that he would inherit the group. However, unexpectedly in his later years, Chairman Han Young-ju named his 4th son Han Eun-gu as the designated successor instead of Han Min-gu. For Han Min-gu, this was infuriating. He couldn't let the entire group fall into his younger brother's hands. So he gathered not only his other siblings but also his loyal aides to wage a management dispute against his 4th brother and his father. As a result, what was practically an empire, Unsung Group, was effectively dismantled. At this time, Han Min-gu took Unsung Motors, the second brother Han Hyun-gu took Unsung Department Store, the third brother Han Sang-gu took Unsung Heavy Industries, and the 5th brother Han Jong-gu took Unsung Capital. While Han Eun-gu barely retained the position of chairman at Unsung Group and the key affiliate Unsung Construction from his brothers, it was a victory filled with wounds. Afterward, as Unsung Construction and Unsung Electronics faced bankruptcy, Unsung Group declined, while Han Min-gu, with his exceptional management abilities, grew Unsung Motors into a group that surpassed the heyday of Unsung Group. Returning to Han Jong-gu, the early 2000s credit card crisis put Unsung Capital at risk of bankruptcy. As the situation worsened, Han Jong-gu sought help from Han Min-gu. It was a desperate plea for survival, disguised as a request for assistance. Chairman Han Min-gu accepted the request, supporting group funds to acquire Unsung Capital. However, perhaps doubting his brother's management capabilities, he separated Unsung Capital from Unsung Card and only entrusted Han Jong-gu with managing Unsung Card. Han Hyorin is Han Minggu's niece and a cousin of Han Chanyang. Is the plan to draw Samsung SB towards Unsung Motors through marriage? But that alone wouldn't suffice. If they marry, Samsung SB will sell its shares back to Unsung Motors Group. Currently, Samsung SB's stock is at a low point, so purchasing wouldn't be a significant burden. As stated, the stock price that once peaked at 320,000 KRW now hovers below 170,000 KRW, largely due to difficulties in electric vehicle battery sales. China has deliberately excluded South Korean battery companies from subsidy eligibility to support its domestic battery manufacturers. Samsung SB was supposed to supply batteries to Unsung Motors and had even signed an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, but for some reason, Unsung Motors turned their back at the last minute and signed a contract with CL Chemical instead. Could it be that this was a plan to lower Samsung SB's stock price? What is the current price of the company's stock? 6.3%. It's somewhat like a marriage dowry. Taikyu asked, seemingly confused. Can't we defend with our own stocks? It's a good idea, but self-owned stocks have no voting rights. Bought-back company stocks are excluded from voting and dividends. Vice Chairman Im Jin-yong said with a pained expression. Unsung Group will first secure self-owned stocks, and then increase their share in Samsung SB through on-market purchases and new stock issuance. Once the National Pension Fund starts selling after everything wraps up, the stock price is bound to drop further. This would result in substantial losses for the National Pension Fund, but since it's public money, does it really matter? I couldn't help but think to myself. Regardless of personal feelings, Chairman Han Minggu's management skills are indeed impressive. Vice Chairman Im looked at me and said, "What I would like to ask is for OTK Company to buy Samsung SB's self-owned stocks." Selling self-owned stocks to a third party to secure friendly shares is a common strategy for defending management rights. A notable example is when Dexon threatened the management rights of LCsoft, leading CEO Kim Jin-tae to exchange self-owned stocks with Netmarble. Are you asking me to play the role of a white knight? White knight. White knight. That's right. In a hostile takeover, shareholders who help defend management are called white knights. Naturally, shareholders on the opposing side are referred to as black knights. Upon hearing my explanation, Taikyu nodded. Oh really? I thought you were talking about Gandalf. Why is Gandalf coming up here? That old man's nickname is White Knight. He fought against Sauron, who was trying to carry out a hostile M.A. in Middle-earth, which is probably how he got that nickname. Please stop. Vice Chairman Im Jin-yong chuckled. It's a classic, isn't it? I like it too. Actually, I like it as well. I calculated arithmetically. After a few additions, the answer soon emerged. Even if we combine our shares, it's only 23%. That's still short of the hostile stake of 26.6%. That alone won't be enough for defense. That's why I'd like to ask for additional acquisitions in the market. We need to buy at least 3.6% of the shares. Currently, Samsung SB's market cap is 22 trillion won. To acquire a 10% stake, we would need to spend over 2 trillion won. The hostile stake of 26.6% isn't everything. They might have secured other shares as well, right? Vice Chairman Im Jin-yong nodded in agreement. That's correct. In other words, spending 2 trillion won doesn't guarantee success in defending management rights. If things go wrong, we might just end up with the stock and nothing else. Why are you asking us for this? I need allies who won't betray me. Vice Chairman Im Jin-yong looked at me and said, and Samsung Group and OTK Company can cooperate in the future, can't they? Cooperate. At that moment, a hologram appeared before my eyes. Taikyu patted my shoulder and said, Hey, get a grip. Before I knew it, the hologram before me had disappeared. Vice Chairman Im Jin-yong watched my expression and asked, Are you okay? Oh, I was just lost in thought for a moment. Taikyu must have sensed something was off, but spoke as if it were no big deal. This guy tends to get lost in his thoughts while talking. I thought I had only glanced away briefly, but it seems I appeared to be zoning out for a while. In any case, once I gathered my thoughts, I asked Vice Chairman Im, What were you just talking about? We were discussing cooperation. I recalled my earlier thoughts and asked, Are you talking about battery supply? Vice Chairman Im nodded. I'm referring not just to batteries but to the entire automotive business. Currently, Samsung Electronics is preparing for the mass production of the vehicle AP Exelris Auto. Taiki looked surprised. Really? Didn't they originally use a modified version of the mobile AP Exelris? Well, smartphones and cars have differences in operating conditions, longevity, and safety. I've heard a lot of talk saying the Exelris 8 performs better than the Dragoon 5.4. He sure knows his stuff in this area. AP application processor is like the brain of electronic devices such as smartphones. It's an essential component. With the increasing number of electronic devices in cars, the role of APs has become crucial. Especially for achieving autonomous driving, a high-performance AP is essential. The ability to design APs directly is held by only a few companies such as NXP, Qualcomm, and Samsung Electronics. I thought about it coolly. To properly utilize an operating system, hardware performance needs to support it. This also requires various advanced electronic components, such as cameras, sensors, and communication devices. Samsung Electronics is the world's largest IT manufacturer. Their semiconductor technology is unparalleled, and their other components have already demonstrated technical prowess through smartphones. In short, partnering with the Samsung Group would allow for comprehensive collaboration across fields like AP, electronics, and batteries. For batteries, other suppliers can be found besides Samsung SB. However, it's hard to find a partner in electronics that surpasses Samsung Electronics. For instance, just NXP alone purchases components from Samsung Electronics worth billions of dollars each year. Now that I think about it, there's Harman too, I said. At my words, Vice Chairman Im Jin-young adjusted his glasses and replied. In the past, the Samsung Group and the Unsung Group were competitors vying for the top spot in the business world. When the Unsung Group established Unsung Electronics to enter the electronics industry, the Samsung Group also launched Samsung Motors to enter the automotive sector, deepening the rivalry between the two conglomerates. However, after the Unsung Group faced fragmentation due to the battle for the throne, Unsung Electronics went bankrupt and was sold to creditors. The Samsung Group also experienced difficulties during the IMF crisis and withdrew from the automotive industry after selling most of its shares in Samsung Motors. Since then, they maintained a close relationship, but in recent years tensions have begun to arise. While one reason was the departure of Chairman Im Il-kwon, who had a strong friendship with Chairman Han Min-gu. The decisive moment was Samsung Electronics' acquisition of Harman. Harman is a powerhouse in automotive electronic equipment, including car audio, and has relationships with major automobile manufacturers. Last year, Samsung Electronics invested $8 billion to acquire Harman entirely. When this information became known, Chairman Han Min-gu reportedly was deeply shocked, as Harman was a partner to competitors of Unsung Motors. Oh, was that why Unsung Motors tried to acquire XCOP? At Takey's question, I nodded. That's right. Originally, Unsung Group had entrusted security and protection to DS, a subsidiary of Samsung Group. However, due to that incident, they severed ties with DS and tried to grow a security firm by acquiring XCOP. Unfortunately, they lost it right before their eyes for a mere $100,000 difference. Having made a mistake once, this time they would surely be determined to acquire it. From what I've heard, it seems like they had been preparing for quite a while. Taekyu asked Vice Chairman Im Jin-young, but can't you buy it yourself? You have plenty of money. According to reports, Vice Chairman Im Jin-young's wealth is about 16 trillion won, making him the second richest person in South Korea, following his father Im Il-kwon. He was pushed to third place due to some nouveau riche. It would be nice, but I don't have much cash available right now. Conglomerates have a lot of assets, but that doesn't mean they have a lot of cash. This is why they resort to various illegal means to siphon company funds and create slush funds. Most of his wealth is tied up in stocks of subsidiaries of Samsung Group for maintaining management rights. Samsung Electronics has internal reserves amounting to 70 trillion, but if this money were used for private purposes in a management dispute among siblings, shareholders, and even the government, the largest shareholder of Samsung Electronics is the National Pension Service, would not stand idly by. Don't you have any slush funds inherited? I read in an article that Chairman Im Il-kwon had 1,300 name-only accounts. At Taekyu's question, Vice Chairman Im Jin-young gave a wry smile. I don't know about that. It's likely the slush fund is in the trillions, but the sources of the funds would be a problem, so it would be hard to mobilize them for such purposes. This time I asked, have you ever restricted cross-trading shares between group companies? No, we haven't. There's no guarantee of loyalty. In front of money there are no parents, siblings or friends. It's solely about profit and loss. Behind President Im Sung-yeon is Eun Sung Group, and behind them is President Park Si-hyung and the ruling party. As soon as the tides change even slightly, they will switch sides for victory. Then why do you believe me? He answered my question simply. Aren't you on bad terms with Eun Sung Motors? Taek-yu nodded. That's true. I would rather remain a bystander than align myself with Eun Sung Motors. I recalculated again. Director Yoon So-hyun, CEO Im Sung-yeong, and the national pensions shares total 26.6%. Meanwhile, Vice Chairman Im Jin-yong, Samsung Electronics, and Samsung SB's treasury shares combine for 23%. And on top of that, how much does Golden Gate hold? Vice Chairman Im Jin-yong seemed to have considered this as he answered immediately. 1.8%. That's about 40 billion won, right? It's not as much as I expected. Vice Chairman Im Jin-yong looked at me and asked, when can I expect an answer? My thoughts didn't linger. In fact, from the moment I saw Oracle, the answer was almost set. It truly is a remarkable ability. Just getting a slight hint about the future allows you to determine the path you need to take. I replied to him, I'll gladly help you, senior. At that, Vice Chairman Im Jin-yong smiled with satisfaction. That's a relief. We must act as discreetly as possible. If it were to be known that I was teaming up with Samsung Group to buy shares, Eun Sung Motors and the government wouldn't just sit back. Of course, they'll also start buying, and then the available shares will disappear, causing the stock price to skyrocket. I understand now why you came here to avoid people's attention. I'm counting on you, Junior. Leaving the Stamper Hotel, Im Jin-yong got into the waiting car. Inside sat a man in his mid-60s. It was Kim Myung-soo, the head of the Future Strategy Office, the core organization of the Samsung Group. What do you think after meeting in person? At his question, Im Jin-yong slightly shook his head. Well, I'm not sure yet. Reactions to Kang Jin-hoo in the business world have been mixed. Some regard him as a great investor, while others dismiss him as just a lucky financial speculator. It seems that the latter opinion is much more prevalent. The conglomerates that grew alongside the Korean economy have built their own fortresses over generations. Within them, they lived in the illusion that they were somehow different. He once thought the same way. But the IT industry experiences success and decline much faster compared to distribution or manufacturing. He had witnessed top-tier companies like Nokia and Sony fall, and he had also seen emerging companies like Google, AMZ, Facebook, and Allegheny grow into global firms in less than a generation. Silicon Valley was overflowing with startups and young entrepreneurs. Among them were those who had created greater wealth than he had inherited. In comparison, the Korean business community felt stagnant. Therefore, everyone was wary of the suddenly emerging figure of Kang Jin-hoo. From your expression, it seems things are going well. That's right. It's still too early to relax. Even if Representative Kang buys as many shares as possible, they could secure even more friendly stakes on the other side. Im Jin-yong sighed as he spoke. I wish my mother and Sung-yeong would stop now. Kim Myung-soo shook his head. Money and power are like drugs. The chairman has experienced it all already. He had served Im Il-kwon for a long time and knew well the circumstances surrounding the transition of the group's chairmanship. Unlike his older brother, Im Jin-yong, Im Il-kwon was the third son. When he was designated as the heir to the group, he faced strong resistance from his brothers. Im Il-kwon resorted to all means necessary to cut off those who aimed for his position. Though there was no bloodshed, it was akin to a brutal struggle among kin. I thought having both heavy industry and engineering would be enough. If he had instead wanted securities or cards, there might have been room for negotiation. However, Samsung SB is deeply connected to the former, and batteries are a core industry of the future. All electrically powered devices, including smartphones, tablets, laptops, drones, and electric vehicles, rely on batteries. Therefore, he could not afford to hand over management control under any circumstances. When you give one, people will expect two. You must be resolute. Im Jin-yong nodded. I understand. If he could not even protect the throne he inherited, he would have no right to occupy it in the first place. After Vice Chairman Im Jin-young left, Taekyu quickly asked me, "What did you see earlier?" I told him straight away, "Samsung SB batteries is going to be equipped with Keros." Really? It's been a while since Oracle made a move. For that to happen, Samsung SB must not be allowed to fall into the hands of Unsung Motors. But can we really partner with a chaebol? What's wrong with that? You don't like chaebols, do you? Me? Not really. It's not that I particularly dislike them. In fact, one of the main reasons the chaebol system continues to exist is due to the rationale of owner-centric responsible management. If it weren't for that, they would have collapsed long ago. Unlike contract CEOs who obsess over short-term results while watching shareholders, chaebols can manage their businesses with a long-term perspective. If Im Yong-cheol and Im Il-kwon were not part of the founder's family, could they have invested in semiconductors despite shareholder backlash? Similarly, Samsung Motors, which ignored shareholder resistance, ended up failing miserably. I'm not going to dismantle chaebols or reform the economic system. I don't have the ability to do that, and even without it, the Korean economy keeps running smoothly. Do you know what the problem with chaebol groups is? There are many issues. Where do I even start? Well, that's true. I gave the expected answer. They try to do everything on their own. Originally separate from Unsung Group, Unsung Motors has become a major corporation again. First, Unsung Motors manufactures finished cars. Glomus handles transportation, while Linocean takes care of advertising and marketing. Unsung Steel directly produces and supplies steel and plates, and Unsung MD is responsible for parts development, manufacturing, and running service centers. They cover everything from smelting iron in the furnace to distribution, sales, and after-sales service. While they source parts from first, second, and third-tier vendors, this is merely subcontracting, not collaboration. If Unsung Motors had proposed a partnership, Samsung SB would have gladly accepted. However, Chairman Han Min-gu chose the acquisition route. This might have worked in the past, but times have changed. The world is different now, and even conglomerates cannot do everything alone. Unsung Motors plans to acquire Samsung SB to seriously enter the electric vehicle market. But what will happen if the acquisition fails? Can't they just find another company? There are only a few firms worldwide with the technological and production capabilities of Samsung SB. And unless the equipment is idle, increasing battery production suddenly is challenging. Ultimately, various business plans will face hurdles. I decided to call my senior, Sang Yeep. I saw the inauguration ceremony. Your face was on screen too. More importantly, something came up. What is it? Immediately buy shares of Samsung SB. Do it quietly without drawing attention. And use a brokerage firm other than the Golden Gate. Everyone knows about the relationship between OTK Company and Golden Gate. Thus, ordering through Golden Gate might reveal our identity. What's going on? I'll explain when we meet back. Got it. Sang Yeep didn't ask further and hung up the phone. The next day, we flew back to Korea. As we retrieved our luggage and made our way to the arrival hall, security personnel sent by manager Lee Cheol-jin were waiting for us. You must have had a hard time coming over. Taekyu glanced around the arrival area and spoke up. Isn't it common to get some coverage after meeting the President of the United States? It seems they didn't know you were returning today. The news of our meeting with Ronald had already been reported by CNN, yet it was oddly receiving little attention in Korea. One might think media outlets were intentionally withholding coverage due to government pressure. Well, from my perspective, it's a good thing. We exited the arrival hall with the security personnel. Outside, a Maybach S-Class was waiting. Oh, this car belongs to my Nuna. Did Hyunju send it over? Once we got in, the beautiful woman in the driver's seat turned to speak. How was the trip? I was taken aback when I saw her. Ellie, what are you doing here? I came to pick you up. Did my Nuna send you? Ellie winked one eye at me. No, I sneaked out without Jessica knowing. Is that really okay? I moved from the back seat to the passenger seat and fastened my seatbelt. Ellie started the car. Despite the driver's seat being on the opposite side compared to Hong Kong, she seemed completely accustomed to it now. She radiated energy while driving. Did you meet Ronald well? Yes, it was brief. What was it like to meet the President of the United States in person? Since I had only met him when he was a candidate before, this was my first time meeting the actual president. Well, it's kind of amazing. I heard CNN rated him as the worst president in history. We'll find out as we watch. Oracle had only informed me that Ronald was becoming president. What happens after that is uncertain. Typically, a new administration pushes policies strongly based on high approval ratings during the early days. However, Ronald's approval plummeted to 30% even before taking office. This indicated that even those who voted for him had turned their backs. The bigger issue is that both the House and Senate are dominated by the Democrats. Given this situation of a minority government, challenges in governing are expected. If he fails to gain the cooperation of Congress, all the promises he made will become empty words. Because of this, anxiety is already circulating from various places. Is Nuna at the office? Of course. Then we need to gather everyone in the branch manager's office. At my words, Ellie's eyes sparkled with excitement. What's going on? Is it something fun? I'll tell you once we arrive. As we went up to the branch manager's office, Hyunju Nuna was already there with Senior Sang-yeep and Henry as I had mentioned earlier. Hyunju Nuna stopped what she was doing and glared at Ellie. When did you take my car out? Ellie quickly hid behind me and explained, you said I could use it when needed. Hyunju Nuna sat on the sofa and lit a cigarette. I need a lighter. Henry swiftly pulled a lighter from his pocket and lit it for her. Here you go. Thank you. Senior Sang-yeep asked, did meeting with Ronald go well? Yes. What's going on that you called us all here? As soon as I sat down I began to speak. After the inauguration ceremony, Vice Chairman Im Jin-young came to see me. Everyone was surprised at my words. Vice Chairman of Samsung Group? Why? He asked me for help. I summarized his proposal for them. Senior Sang-yeep nodded. So he suggested buying Samsung SB stocks. Hyunju Nuna said while puffing on her cigarette. If he wants to invest in the battery business, there are plenty of other ways. Not just in batteries, but I'm thinking about collaborating across the entire electronics business. What do you think? Hyunju, who had been pondering for a moment, nodded her head. That's a good idea. Keros has secured software, and Samsung Electronics has hardware technology. It won't be easy to find such good partners. But is it just for the sake of collaboration? The most critical reason is, we can't let Samsung SB become Unsung SB. If Samsung SB is secured, Unsung Motors will ramp up its electric vehicle development and mass production. However, a failure would cost considerable time. How much does Golden Gate own? Hold on. Let me find some data. Hyunju sat in front of her desk and typed on her computer. 1.8%. Including what affiliated companies have, it's 2.2%. If Golden Gate supports us, even buying just 1.5% will give us more shares than the opponent. What's the circulation of shares? It's probably around 20% at most. The shares held by Director Yoon So-hyun, CEO Im Sung-yong, and the National Pension Service account for 26.6%. Samsung Electronics, Treasury shares and Golden Gate together hold 25.2%. That alone exceeds 50%. The rest is divided among institutions, foreign investors and minor shareholders. The circulating amount will likely be less than half. Even buying just half of that would lead to the stock price soaring daily. Ellie said, it seems impossible for either side to secure a majority share. Hyunju nodded. The key is who can attract the shareholders' votes. Between Im Jin-young and Im Sung-yong, who has the advantage? Well, if we only consider the small battery sector, Im Jin-young might be better. Samsung SB relies heavily on Samsung Electronics for most of its sales. But for large batteries for electric vehicles, Im Sung-yong has the edge. Just because Im Sung-yong takes charge doesn't mean the relationship with Samsung Electronics will end. Senior Sang-yeep also spoke up. If Im Sung-yong brings a cooperation card with Unsung Motors, the government will likely back it openly. Two major companies joining forces to develop future vehicles means the National Pension Service has no reason to oppose it. The signing of a battery supply contract between Samsung SB and Unsung Motors would be a factor for rising stock prices. Naturally, shareholders would welcome it with open arms. However, whether this will truly benefit Samsung SB remains uncertain. I recalled Vice Chairman Im Jin-young's words. No one can be trusted when money is on the line. How much does Unsung Motors really trust Im Sung-yong? Combining the stakes of director Yoon So-hyun and CEO Im Sung-yong, they hold only 10.5%. If they receive treasury shares, Unsung Motors will acquire 6.3%, and if the national pension sells its shares, they could secure around 15%. Even if they entrust it to Im Sung-yong temporarily, isn't it still possible to take back the management rights later? Ellie replied, that could happen. Once you catch the rabbit, the hunting dog might no longer be needed. Hyunju exhaled cigarette smoke and asked, do you have a specific plan? I nodded. I have some ideas in mind. I understand, but you must disclose if you acquire more than 5% of a specific company's shares. For now, quietly increase your stake in the market. Once the sale of treasury shares is announced, they won't stay silent either. It's best to hold at least 10% to cooperate. Yes. I turned to Henry. I'll leave that task to you. This time I want to see the skills of the Golden Gate heir. Henry nodded confidently. I'll diversify the accounts and purchase shares from various brokerages. They won't notice until it surpasses the 5% threshold. I explained the current situation and future plans to Daryl during our call. Collaboration with Samsung Group is a good thing. However, I worry that we might be overinvesting. If things don't go as planned, everything could fall apart. That's true. In manufacturing management, demand forecasting is crucial. If it's underestimated, we may accept orders but fail to supply on time. Conversely, overestimating means our facilities and workforce remain idle. I invested in acquisitions and factory construction, anticipating a rise in demand. Yet if demand doesn't meet expectations, we could face significant losses even if products sell well. Is it wise to invest in batteries when I haven't even stabilized what I've already started? I thought of Oracle. Oracle had only mentioned that Keros would equip their vehicles with Samsung SB batteries, but didn't specify how well they would sell. But the die is already cast. Don't worry about that. Focus on development for now. Internal combustion engines may not be immediately profitable, but we must ultimately transition to electric vehicles. Following everyone else is meaningless. We need to move faster and differently from others. Chairman Im Il-kwon has been hospitalized in a VIP room on the 25th floor of Seoul Samsung Hospital in Songpa District since he collapsed. The VIP room is off-limits to anyone other than medical staff and family. A few times, reporters tried to interview the medical personnel, but no one spoke, citing the patient's privacy as confidential. With his prolonged absence, various rumors about Chairman Im's health circulated. Some speculated he was feigning illness to push Im Jin-young as his successor, while others claimed he had dementia, was in a coma or had already died. However, the Samsung Group made no announcements, leaving everything in the realm of speculation. Recently, though, rumors began circulating again that Chairman Im's condition had worsened. I thought it was just a rumor again, but the situation unfolding was unusual. President Im Soo-mi of the Ceylon Hotel and President Im Soo-kyung of Neverland had been going to the hospital instead of the company for days, while Director Yoon So-hyun and President Im Sung-yong stayed confined in the hospital room. Vice Chairman Im Jin-young had a schedule in the U.S. to meet with business leaders but hurried back after attending Ronald's inauguration ceremony. A few days later, shocking news broke. Chairman Im Il-kwon passes away. The entire business world is in shock. What lies ahead for the Samsung Group? President Park Si-hyung expressed sorrow, stating that a star in Korean economic history has set. Chairman Im Il-kwon's life was synonymous with the history of Samsung Group and Korea's industrialization. Like many large conglomerates, they grew through political and economic ties and committed various illegal acts: tax evasion, embezzlement, breach of trust, slush funds, and illicit succession methods. As a result, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison with a 5-year probation but was soon pardoned. Despite the controversies surrounding him, no one can deny that he made significant contributions to the Korean economy. Thus his death came as a great shock. Including Samsung Electronics, the Samsung Group's shares accounted for nearly 30% of the stock exchange. Upon the shocking news, the Kospi index plummeted by 1% within moments. The Samsung Group quickly released an official statement, mourning Chairman Im Il-kwon's death and announcing their commitment to stable management under Im Jin-young's leadership. In essence, Im Il-kwon's death does not affect the fundamentals. Consequently, the losses were quickly recovered. The business community was somber. Some even cancelled scheduled events as a sign of mourning. On the other hand, we became busier. With the chairman position and several other roles, including CEO of Samsung SB, vacant, each affiliate would move to appoint a new CEO once the funeral concluded and the situation stabilized. Then the real competition would begin. I called Vice Chairman Im Jin-young to express my condolences first. I'm sure you are heartbroken. I pray for the repose of the deceased. Thank you. Personally, I respect entrepreneur Im Il-kwon. I had always thought I would meet him and have a conversation, but now that has become impossible. However, if we announce our purchase of company shares, the media and government won't stand idly by. Vice Chairman Im Jin-young agreed with my statement. The Jungilbo will probably be the first to open fire. The funeral hall has been decided to be at Seoul Samsung Hospital, in accordance with the wishes of the deceased. The family announced they would hold the funeral as quietly as possible, but signs already indicated that mourners were beginning to gather. Of course, in Korea, it seems there's hardly anyone who isn't directly or indirectly associated with Samsung Group. After all, that's why the term Samsung Republic came about, right? Prominent figures from business and politics will all attend, and ambassadors from various countries and foreign corporations have also expressed their intention to be present. Even if we estimate a low number of mourners, it will be in the thousands. If they all arrive at once, there's a concern that not only the funeral hall but the entire hospital could be paralyzed. The parking lot would surely be overflowing. So they decided to take reservations by time slots. Chairman Im Il-kwon's death has left us with another task. That is, Senior Sang Yeep said, aren't we supposed to go too? If I were just an ordinary college student, I wouldn't need to worry about such things. However, my current title is the CEO of OTK Company. Recently, I even met with Vice Chairman Im Jin-young directly, and I plan to collaborate with Samsung Group going forward. If I don't attend the funeral for no good reason, I might hear comments later on. Regardless, isn't it our virtue to participate in major life events like weddings and funerals together? The issue is that influential figures from both business and politics will all be present. Given that even the president is expected to pay their respects, I'm worried that it might result in an awkward situation if I go. Taekyu said, is it really necessary to go? Vice Chairman Im Jin-young didn't attend your father's funeral, did he? Back then I didn't know him, so how could he have come? Anyone who hears that would think Vice Chairman Im Jin-young is a professional non-attendee. Senior Sang Yeep said again, if you're not going, shouldn't you at least make a condolence payment? It's a valid point. If you can't go in person, sending a condolence envelope is the polite thing to do. Taekyu asked, how much should we put in? Actually, this is the biggest problem. Describe the appropriate amount for condolence money at the Samsung Group chairman's funeral and the justifiable reasons for it. 10 points. Isn't this almost an essay? We huddled together, thinking seriously. I brought up common social norms first. For condolence or congratulatory money, if you're not close, it's 50,000 won. If you are 100,000 won. Then isn't 50,000 won enough? We're not that close. But we met Vice Chairman Im Jin-young not long ago. Taekyu shook his head. Just seeing someone once doesn't mean we're close. He didn't even buy us a meal. He did buy us coffee though. True. Senior Sang Yeep spoke incredulously. Are you joking? If it gets out that the OTK company representative gave just 50,000 won, it would make the news. As Sang Yeep said, journalists with nothing to do might pick it up as a story. OTK company representative donates only 50,000 won at Samsung Group chairman's funeral. 50,000 won donation. What does it really mean? Implying a lack of closeness with Samsung Group through the token amount of 50,000 won. 50,000 won is merely 1/10 of CEO Kang Jin-hoo's assets. These days, friends don't do things like this. Is Kang Jin-hoo even human after this? Where is his conscience? Looking at the state of the news from the three major broadcasting companies these days, it wouldn't be surprising to see an article like this. Even amid the noisy situation regarding the National Intelligence Service's civilian surveillance issue, our news media is still reporting that sausage bread tastes good on rainy days. After all, the entire nation knows my wealth is in the tens of trillions, so is it really that strange to contribute only 50,000 won? Then how much should we contribute? Senior Sang Yeep seriously offered his opinion. Shouldn't it be around 10 million won? We were taken aback. That's so much. Taekyu raised a counterargument. But the family on that side is quite wealthy too. Whether it's 100,000 won or 10 million won, they probably wouldn't care much. That was a valid point. Opinions remained divided between those wanting to contribute only 50,000 won, Taekyu, and those believing it should be 10 million won, Senior Sang Yeep. But then Taekyu suddenly changed his mind. Thinking it over, maybe 10 million won isn't a bad idea. Out of the blue. No, if we put in 10 million won now, when you get married later, won't they gift you a Samsung Electronics TV worth 30 million won? How would I know when I'll get married? But then listening to it, it did make sense. If you give 10 million won and receive a 30 million won TV in return, doesn't that sound like a good deal? I took a moment to think and came to a conclusion. Let's just ask when my Nuna comes back. Oh, that sounds good. I agree too. The two of them nodded in agreement with my words. Just then Hyunju, having finished her work, returned to the office with Ellie. Taekyu asked, "Are you going to Chairman Im Il-kwan's funeral?" Hyunju nodded her head. "Have to go. The Golden Gate and Samsung Group have some ties. I've already registered on the guest list. Ellie will accompany me as my aide." "How much are you planning to donate?" "Donate. We've been in a meeting for an hour discussing how much to contribute. Let's only donate what you do, Nuna." Hyunju looked at us with a helpless expression as she put a cigarette in her mouth. "Didn't you hear that they're not accepting donations? The Samsung Group's family is not in a position where they can't hold a funeral without contributions. If they wanted, they could buy the whole funeral hall. No, it's actually Samsung Hospital that belongs to the family." "Oh, is that so?" Our faces all brightened simultaneously. We had been worrying about something unnecessary. The news buzzed with the funeral of Chairman Im Il-kwan. As expected, the funeral home was packed. Long black sedans lined up in front of Seoul Samsung Hospital. Dozens of traffic police were deployed for traffic control and parking guidance, and the hospital scrambled to find nearby parking. Only those whose names were on the pre-registered list could attend the morning ceremony, and the press was prohibited from entering. A separate incense altar was set up for general visitors, and a line of mourners formed there as well. Some progressive organizations and fired workers from Samsung affiliates protested in front of the altar with banners and placards depicting various illegal activities of Chairman Im Il-kwan, while conservative groups staged counter-demonstrations right in front of them. The thoughts of the mourners were divided. Some fainted from crying in front of the altar and had to be carried away, while others were dragged out after shouting that he was responsible for collusion between politics and business and the ruin of the common economy. Hyunju and Ellie represented Golden Gate, while Senior Sang Yup and Henry attended on behalf of OTK Company. After much hesitation, I decided to go with Taekyu to the funeral home at Seoul Samsung Hospital on the last day of the funeral. Taekyu remarked in amazement, "I can't believe I'm going to the funeral of the chairman of Samsung Group after attending the inauguration of the American president." I found it surprising too. Do you know the etiquette for a funeral? You can't make mistakes. While you might get away with some errors at a wedding, proper decorum is expected at a funeral. Taekyu confidently nodded. Of course. I even checked the Baram Funeral Home website. Oh really? Show me later. Don't you already know since you've been a mourner before? I shook my head. I was so flustered that I don't even remember how it went. One thing I clearly remember is that Taekyu cried a lot for 3 days. It got to the point where some mistook him for a family member, and later people even thought he was someone hired for the occasion. A mourner from the adjacent room approached me and asked, "How much do you pay a person like him for a day?" The car quickly arrived at Seoul Samsung Hospital. We got out and entered the funeral hall. At the entrance to the VIP room, bodyguards in suits wearing earpieces were standing guard. A man who seemed to be the head of the security team approached us and asked, "What's your name?" Only those whose names were registered in advance could enter the memorial. Given the presence of influential figures from the business and political realms, security was tight to prevent disturbances from reporters or protesters inside. I told the security chief, "Please inform them that Chairman Kang Jin-hoo of OTK Company and Vice Chairman Oh Taekyu have arrived." Only then did the bodyguards look surprised upon seeing my face. "Please wait a moment." As the security chief went inside, Taekyu quietly asked, "What if they say we can't go in? We'll just leave our names and go. At least that would show our respects. I'm hungry. Can't we just quietly have a bowl of spicy beef soup before we leave? Go outside and buy something. How much could it possibly cost? No way. The spicy beef soup here is delicious." It's hard to argue when he's so right. The security chief returned quickly. "You may enter." Yes. The hallway leading to the VIP room was lined with numerous wreaths. To the left of the entrance were wreaths sent from the business world, and to the right, those from the political sphere. Chairman Chai Won-tae of SSK Group, Chairman Jin Kyung-ho of Light Group, Chairman Han Min-gu of Unsung Group, and Chairman Yang Junimo of CL Group, among others. Korea Party, New Politics Party, Future National Party, Democratic Integration Party, etc. Party leaders, floor leaders, various members of the National Assembly, and various ministers and vice ministers. The wreath sent by President Park Si-hyung was placed in a spot that was particularly visible. Arranging the wreaths in some order must have been quite a headache. As I walked down the long corridor, the morning hall came into view. It wasn't particularly luxurious, just somewhat larger than average. Even a wealthy individual could access this special room. If the funeral parlor were extravagant, it would seem a bit odd. During the funeral, the bereaved should stay in their seats. If there are many siblings, they take turns standing vigil. I was curious who was present at this time. There was a woman in her mid-40s dressed in mourning clothes and a man in his early 30s. I recognized them from seeing them on TV multiple times. Eldest daughter Im Soo-mi, CEO of Salon Hotel, and youngest son Im Sung-yong, CEO of Samsung Heavy Industries. It seems blood tells. Both resembled Chairman Im Il-kwon and Vice Chairman Im Jin-yong. "I'm sorry for coming at this late hour," said CEO Im Soo-mi to us. "No, thank you for coming," I replied. In the middle of the not-so-large altar lay a portrait of the deceased, showing Chairman Im Il-kwon in good health. I lit the incense and placed it on the burner before bowing twice with Taekyu towards the altar. Then I bowed to the bereaved and offered my condolences. "I can only imagine your sorrow. Though I never met him in life, I always respected the deceased. I believe he has gone to a good place." Kyo Im Soo-mi smiled faintly. My father would always smile and be happy whenever he heard about OTK Company. He mentioned wanting to meet after being discharged in good health, so thank you for coming even under these circumstances. OTK Company became known to the public during the L6 incident. By then he must have been struggling to move. Whether it was just a polite remark or not, I genuinely felt it would have been nice to have met him at least once. Despite the late hour, there were quite a few people keeping vigil. We sat in a corner. The table was laid with spicy beef soup, sliced meat, peanuts, and tangerines. Chairman Im Il-kwon lived a lavish life. However, the scene at the funeral home didn't seem much different from that of ordinary people. "Want a drink?" At a funeral, it's soju. Since I came with the bodyguard and driver, it didn't matter if I drank. We filled our soju glasses. Given the funeral setting, we drank silently without toasting, enjoying the spicy soup with rice. As I sipped the soju, I thought about Chairman Im Il-kwon. Unlike the founder, Chairman Im Young-cheol, who struggled after the Korean War, Im Il-kwon was born into wealth and was still a chaebol at the moment of his death. He lived in a fine house, ate good food, and enjoyed all the good things life had to offer. Yet whether rich or poor, life is the same. The end is unavoidable for everyone. It's merely a matter of being glamorous or miserable, long or short. I looked at the people in the funeral home. Considering they were here at this hour, were they all attending the burial tomorrow? Most were likely from the Samsung Group. Were they mourning the deceased, rejoicing, or calculating how this would affect them? Taekyu whispered, "Do you think he knew that his family would turn against each other after his death?" He probably did. It had happened before. After banishing his two older brothers from Samsung Group, Chairman Im Il-kwon lived his life without seeing them even once. His family was also kept far from the group. Isn't it absurd if this is the fate of chaebol groups? It's not the era of monarchy anymore. We continued to eat the spicy soup with our heads down. I would have regretted it if I hadn't eaten. I think I'll have another bowl. No condolences, just extracting every bit. I casually said, "I'll have another bowl too." At that moment someone approached from the side. "May I sit for a moment?" It was none other than the president Im Sung-yong. President Im Sung-yong resembled Vice President Im Jin-yong quite a bit. Perhaps it was the similar hairstyles and the fact that both wore glasses that made the resemblance stronger. He was 32 years old. With Vice President Im Jin-yong being 45, there was a 13-year age difference. Yes, please sit down. With that, Im Sung-yong took a seat beside us. Thank you for coming. I think my father would be pleased as well. If that's the case, I'd be glad. Im Sung-yong opened a bottle of water and took a sip. He looked quite exhausted. It was understandable, not just because of the funeral, but he had been by his mother's side at the hospital for some time. You must be in deep sorrow. It was something I expected and I was mentally prepared, but now that he's gone, I feel quite empty. I nodded in agreement. I understand how you feel. Im Sung-yong seemed like he wanted to say something but held back. He probably already knew about my family matters as well as the unfortunate relationship between me and Unsung Motors. I casually remarked, with the chairman gone, Vice President Im Jin-yong will now manage Samsung Group. Im Sung-yong nodded. That seems to be the case. For conglomerates, what matters most is management rights. No matter how much money one has, without management rights, they are merely a wealthy individual with cash. However, even with a small stake, controlling management rights allows one to operate a company worth tens of trillions freely. Im Sung-yong had received Samsung Heavy Industries and Samsung Engineering. Combined, these two alone have a market value of over 7 trillion won. Even at this level, one can confidently speak in the business world. However, people tend to be more regretful about what they lack than what they have. If they received 7 trillion out of 40 trillion, it would be one thing, but receiving 7 trillion out of 400 trillion changes the narrative quite a bit. On the other hand, all the profitable sectors like materials, electronics, life sciences and biotech belonged to his brother. Compared to that, what he received is practically worthless. The bigger issue is that both heavy industry and engineering are not in good condition. You can see it from the bankruptcy of Hyundai Shipping. Shipbuilding is sinking alongside shipping, and plants are also struggling against China's low-price offensive. Is that why he wants to acquire Samsung SB? Having turned his back on his brother, he will need as many allies as he can get. My influence on the Korean business community isn't that significant. But separate from that, I do have a lot of money. Excluding Samsung Group and Unsung Motors, how many chaebols have cash assets like ours? Depending on how I decide to use this money, I could shake the business world. And while my impact may be small in Korea, it's a different story in the US. I'm currently expanding my business in the Rust Belt and have direct connections to the White House. If that weren't the case, I wouldn't even be sitting here. Honestly, I don't care who takes Samsung SB. That is, unless it's related to Unsung Motors. I've thought about this calmly. Chairman Im Il-kwon defeated his brothers to take over the group. If he had the ability, he wouldn't care whether his opponents were older or younger. Perhaps he took away only heavy industry and engineering because he perceived his capacity as only that big. Yet he is still being greedy for more. Greed often invites trouble. However, I'm not in a position to give that kind of advice from where I sit. After all, I finished my meal. I stood up with "Take you. You must be tired, so we will take our leave now. Once again, may the deceased rest in peace." "Thank you." We greeted each other and left the funeral home. As we walked down the corridor, I noticed two middle-aged men walking in from the opposite direction. They saw us, whispered among themselves, and then one of them approached me. "Are you Kang Jin-hoo, the representative of OTK Company?" "Yes, I am." The man with salt and pepper hair nudged the bespectacled man beside him and said, "See? I told you." Then he extended his hand to me. "Nice to meet you. I'm Ryu Cheol-jaeun." I was surprised and shook his hand. "Hello, I'm Kang Jin-hoo. I didn't expect to meet you here." His expression brightened at my words. "Do you know me?" "Of course. How could I not know the chairman of RCK Brothers?" While not widely known to the public, he is a significant figure in the finance world. I'd heard countless tales of his achievements since entering business school. Because of him, many seniors shifted their focus from investment banking to private equity. "And this gentleman?" The man with the glasses spoke up. "Nice to meet you. I'm Shin Byung-do." Seeing him with Chairman Ryu made me suspect who he was. "I've heard a lot about you from my daughter. I never expected that a school senior would be the representative of OTK Company." I was also surprised to hear it from Yuri. Vice Chairman Shin still gives off a middle-aged vibe, but he must have been quite handsome in his youth. Upon closer inspection he somewhat resembles Yuri. I then introduced Taekyu to them. Here's my friend. This is OTK Company's vice president, Taekyu. Hello. Taekyu greeted the two of them as well. Chairman Ryu Cheoljin gave us a thumbs up. We took a hit from the X-Cop acquisition. It was impressive, really. Receiving such praise from a true expert made me feel a bit shy. I couldn't say it was thanks to Oracle. I turned the credit to Hyunju. Director Oh Hyunju handled everything from the due diligence to the bidding. I didn't do much. Vice President Shin Byung-do asked. There are rumors that team leader Seo Sang-won will join OTK Company. Is it true? I guess the rumors have already spread. That's a good thing. The audit team reported nothing, and the resignation submitted to Unsung Group was accepted without issues. Team leader Seo Sang-won is expected to join us with his team in a few days. We have already set up all the office space for them. It doesn't sound like a very good rumor, though. Chairman Ryu waved his hand dismissively. I don't care about rumors. I've known him since his days at Redstone. He's not that kind of person. I nodded in agreement. That's true. If he were like that, he wouldn't have made the recruitment proposal in the first place. A person who has betrayed once can betray again at any time. There's no guarantee that someone who sells information about another company won't sell our company's information in the future. He chuckled lightly. It's just Unsung Group being foolish. Losing great talents right after X-Cop is unfortunate. The image portrayed in media articles or columns is sharp and meticulous, but meeting him in person revealed a playful and friendly demeanor. It seemed the former was his work persona, while the latter reflected his true character. We've just come to pay our respects. Are you heading back after this? Yes. Chairman Ryu Cheoljin spoke with a sense of regret. If I had known it would be like this, I should have come a bit earlier. I just got off a flight from China and I'm on my way here. So that's why he came so late. If you can spare some time, I'll visit next time. You're always welcome. We exchanged contact information. Chairman Ryu patted Vice Chairman Shin Byung-do on the shoulder and said, Let's grab a beer nearby after work. There's a pub in Gangnam I often go to with this friend. Sure. I'll get in touch. The two men entered the hall and we stepped outside the funeral home. I expressed disbelief, saying, I never thought I would see those two in person here. Taekyu asked, noticing my expression, Are they really that impressive? In the gaming world they'd be like Ichika and Shigeru, the developers of Lost Fantasy. Taekyu immediately understood. Legendary legends, huh? One advantage of doing this job is that I get to meet people I think of as legends. From Chase Southwell and James C. Goldman to now meeting Chairman Ryu Cheoljin and Vice Chairman Shin Byung-do in person. At this rate, I might even meet Warren Buffett someday. When Im Il-kwon married Yoon So-hyun, it was a time when chaebols were cautious under the public eye. However, decades later, both of their situations have changed significantly. The Samsung Group has grown into a global enterprise, while the Jungilbo faces difficulties both internally and externally. Media power has long shifted from newspapers to portal sites. People have moved away from subscribing to newspapers, opting instead to click on articles displayed on portal homepages. The two cable channels, which had a hard time securing dividends, are now running at a loss. If advertising from large corporations were to cease, their survival would be at risk. For Yoon So-hyun, Jungilbo was once run by her father and is now managed by her brother, making it a family business. However, that business is gradually declining. She hoped her husband would intervene and help, but he only provided ad allocations and drew the line at additional support. After her husband's health worsened and their eldest son took over management, she expected help again. But that was her misperception. Surprisingly, her son resembled his father closely. In other words, he prioritized only himself and Samsung Group. After multiple attempts to persuade her son ended in rejection, their emotional gap widened, and Yoon So-hyun gave up her expectations for her eldest son. Although she did not hold management rights, she owned some shares in the subsidiary. Coincidentally, her younger sister, Yoon So-jin, conveyed a proposal from Yoon Song. If things went well, the rewards would be directed to Jungilbo. Once Im Jin-young officially assumed the chairman position, it would be nearly impossible to take away the management rights of the subsidiaries. This was the last chance. She cleverly encouraged her youngest son. Luckily, Im Sung-yong acted according to his mother's wishes. He harbored significant resentment towards his brother who had taken everything. Consequently, he wasn't shy about wanting to secure more for himself. Im Sung-yong was confident that with his shares, his mother's shares and support from the National Pension Service, he could sufficiently acquire Samsung SB. How long has it been since the new year started? The calendar has already turned to February. The inauguration of Ronald, which had made waves, and the funeral of Chairman Im Il-kwon are now past events. The inheritance was distributed to the family according to the will. Each of the 4 children received shares of their respective companies, while his wife, Director Yoon So-hyun, was given various real estate, bonds and cash. The inheritance tax was unprecedented. The government likely won't have to worry about tax revenue this year. After the funeral, Vice Chairman Im Jin-yong busily worked within the group to stabilize management. Since he had been acting in this role since Chairman Im Il-kwon collapsed, there was little chaos. Although he hadn't officially taken office yet, it was practically a given that he would assume the chairmanship once matters were settled. The subsidiaries formed new boards and reorganized. Companies where Chairman Im Il-kwon served as CEO held extraordinary general meetings to elect new CEOs. Samsung SB was included in this. We had been consistently buying shares of Samsung SB since before the funeral. Approximately 20 to 25% of the shares were being traded in the market. The stock price, which had once hit 320,000 won, fell to the low 170,000s after the car battery failed certification in China, and contracts with Unsung Motors fell through. Henry diversified orders across several foreign securities firms. While it sounds easy, it was a long and tedious process in reality. Buying large quantities at once causes the stock price to soar instantly. Therefore, we had to continuously place small orders that matched the sell orders to ensure execution. But no matter how quietly we bought, if the circulating shares diminished, an increase in stock price became inevitable. We began negotiations for stock buybacks before prices escalated further. Such matters should be handled by experts on my behalf. Team leader Seo Sang-won made secret contact with the other party to negotiate. Our holdings now surpassed 4%, and during this time the stock price had also risen by over 15%, nearing 200,000 won. Suddenly, aggressive buying started pouring in from somewhere. In an instant the stock price surged and the bulletin board was in chaos. What's happening with Samsung SB? Why is it rising suddenly? It seems there's some good news on the horizon. Foreigners are continuously buying up shares. It looks like good news will be breaking soon, so don't sell off your shares. Just hold on tight. I clicked my tongue. They seem to have noticed. You asked. Noticed that we're buying? They probably don't know who, but they must have realized that someone is steadily accumulating shares. So, it seems they've started buying to increase their stake as well. What do we do now? I was planning to stop anyway. Currently, our holding is 4.7%. Once it exceeds 5%, we must make a public disclosure according to regulations. If we disclose at this point, people will wonder why OTK company is buying Samsung SB shares and will likely start buying before knowing the answer. As you know, OTK company has achieved great success in all its investments. Therefore, it's not surprising if there's chasing buying following it. At the moment we stopped buying, Samsung SB made its disclosure. They announced that they would sell all their treasury shares, which account for 6.3%, to OTK company. OTK company also disclosed that it acquired a total of 11% of Samsung SB, including the treasury shares. As the disclosure went out, Samsung SB's stock price began to fluctuate wildly.